In this week's episode of One Punch Man, Earth is being invaded by mutant aliens. So the Heroes Association gathers its strongest S-Class heroes and Saitama to battle against the alien menace. Lots of new characters introduced in this episode, lots of crazy fight scenes and monsters, giant flying tengus, Godzilla creatures, and a massive alien invasion. This was another ridiculous, over-the-top, and very fun episode of One Punch Man. Earth is about to be destroyed by these aliens, which apparently have the ability to destroy the entire planet. This was predicted by this old fortune teller lady who was seen at the end of last week's episode, who also mysteriously died after making this prediction. The Heroes Association has gathered all of its strongest heroes, as well as Saitama, and let them know that this is probably the biggest threat that mankind has ever faced. First, we have to be introduced and reintroduced to a few characters in this episode. All these different S-Class heroes. Saitama is here, but basically he's just hanging out with Genos. We get to see the return of Puri Puri Prisoner. That's pretty hilarious. We also get to see the return of the Silver Fang, who at the beginning of the episode is trying to train Saitama and Genos with his martial arts style, but really it's not necessary at all. It's also an excuse to introduce one of his mysterious students, who I have a feeling is probably going to play a role in the story at some point in time. They made a mention of bringing him up and making him seem like he was the only student that the Silver Fang ever trained that was like really badass, so I can't wait to see what that's all about. We also get to see the return of Tatsumaki, otherwise known as the Tornado, who has an amazing entrance at the beginning of this week's episode, where she fights against this giant Godzilla monster, which is a part of the Terror Lizard clan. It's a really great opening scene because it's our first demonstration of her powers. She's psychic, so what does she do? She summons a massive meteorite and crushes it, instantly burning it into the ground. Tatsumaki versus Madara. Make it happen. As far as new characters go, we have this one big guy who goes by the name of King, who has these 3 scars across his face. He's implied by Genos to be the strongest man on Earth, but come on, can this guy really take Saitama? There's also Zombie Man, who doesn't really do anything. What's the deal with Zombie Man? Is he actually dead? Does he have regenerating abilities? There's this cool-looking cyborg character who goes by the name of Drive Knight. I don't know anything about him, he just looks really cool and doesn't really say anything. It didn't take too long, but we finally have our very first cool, stereotypical samurai character, the Atomic Samurai, who's really awesome in this episode when he fights against this giant mutant alien which has multiple heads. He also has an apprentice who goes by the name of Eion, who basically is a combination of, like, a typical, like, medieval knight and a samurai, and he also fights against this giant mutated alien, and for the most part, gets his ass handed to him. He does have his arm ripped off. There's also Flashy Flash, who basically is just this one pretty boy character, who again, like most everyone else, just sorta stands around and doesn't say anything. There's also the Child Emperor, who is this super genius child prodigy. I'm not sure what his actual powers are going to be outside of being smart and kind of a smart ass, but we're gonna have to wait and see. There's also Super Alloy Blackluster, who basically is just this super muscular dude who's wearing a Speedo. I don't know, I guess he's strong. What I think I love most about Super Alloy Blackluster is that it's just really fun to say that. There's this big dude whose power just seems to be eating shit. He's known as the Pig God. There's also a few S-Class heroes who do not show up. Metal Knight should be there, but he's off doing God knows what, probably testing out a new weapon. And the Rank 1 S-Class hero is not there as well. His name is Blast. I cannot wait to see what this Rank 1 guy is like. Oh, and there's also Watchdog-Man, who I still feel is probably very close to Saitama in terms of strength. They implied that he's incredibly powerful, and he has the same expressions as him, so maybe there's a connection between these two characters, but unfortunately we haven't seen him in action. The good news is this week's episode does have some action as well, most of which comes from Saitama and Atomic Samurai, but both scenes are really good. The Atomic Samurai scene is really cool just because it's great to see someone with a sword fighting against a monster like that, especially one that can transform its body parts into different weapons. It's really flashy and stylized in classic anime. And then we have Saitama, who immediately starts going up against this massive alien ship, which is absolutely gigantic. It's one of the biggest things I've ever seen. I don't think it's as big as Spaceball 1, but it's definitely up there. When Saitama gets close to the ship, they start firing at him with these massive shell casings, which he just barely dodges. And there's this scene where he dodges multiple ones, and then kicks one by breaking it in half, and then throwing it right back at the ship. It's a great sequence, I wish there was more of it. But he immediately gets inside of the spaceship, starts fighting every alien and monster that gets in his way, including this one Venus flytrap monster who announces his name just to have his head get exploded. And then he's just like wondering, I wonder where the big boss is. And at the very end of the episode, we get what I'm guessing is going to be the leader of this alien group sitting upon his throne. This guy's got these weird big ears, spikes all over his body, and this crazy big eyeball right in the middle. As cool looking and as powerful as the alien leader is probably going to be, I have a feeling that Saitama is just going to wipe the floor with him. The problem is Saitama doesn't have that much direction, and it's going to take some time probably getting to him, so I imagine that we're going to see some of the other heroes, probably Genos and some of these brand new characters, actually fighting against this guy. Speaking of which, I completely forgot about Metal Bat. Metal Bat, you are awesome. You are a stereotypical Japanese delinquent. But you know what? You're awesome. So what's the rundown of this week's episode of One Punch Man? Overall, I have to say that this was a pretty satisfying episode. It's really great to finally see Saitama amongst his peers, especially the top dogs in the class. You can see that he's very excited to be there and to kind of show off in front of them. He really wants to be respected by them, while at the same time, he has to stop this menace, which is absolutely disturbingly powerful. They say that it could even be a god-level threat, which that's a pretty big deal. We haven't seen anything like that in the series, and it took a massive alien invasion to make that happen. As for the aliens themselves, their introduction in this episode was probably one of the best parts, because at first it seemed like the base was being attacked, and they go outside and you see this massive Tengu monster, which goes by the name of the Sky King. After the deaths of the Deep Sea King and the Underground King, he decides that he's going to take over, and it looks like he was going to be the main threat of this episode, but he's suddenly cut in half, completely clean down the middle by one of the weird freaky morphing aliens from this giant ship. That and of course the opening sequence with Tornado fighting against that giant Godzilla monster, that was really awesome. Saitama dodging all of the giant attacks from the spaceship and destroying everything within, and just getting to see all these new heroes. This was a fantastic episode that is planting the seeds for multiple stories in the future, while at the same time making this one of the most exciting arcs of the series. It also had some pretty damn good animation and artwork and great character design, just like the rest of the series. So check out this week's episode of One Punch Man, another solid episode of a pretty damn solid anime series. I'm giving this one a 5 out of 5. Another perfect episode from this series. I mean, damn. This one just keeps on rocking my world. I cannot wait to see how they're going to wrap this one up. And as soon as they finish the anime version, if they are not going to make any more episodes, I'm going to have to start reading the manga version. And even if they do announce it and it's going to be a long time, I still might have to take a peek. I'm that intrigued about the world of One Punch Man. But if you did watch this week's episode, I would love to hear your thoughts about it, and you can tell me in the comment section below. Did you have a favorite hero who was introduced in this week's episode? Maybe a favorite action scene? What do you want to see from the rest of the One Punch Man anime series? Make sure to tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching this review. If you're feeling like a badass, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be able to see all of our latest anime and manga reviews. You guys can also follow us on social media. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!